Hello y'all, welcome back to Case Can Probably Read. My name is allegedly Casey. This past weekend, I had a contest for my studio that we'd been working hard for the past couple of months. That was really stressful, and I had this feeling that I was not going to have time to get in a video this weekend, and I was right. My students did super well. I'm very proud of all of the ones that participated. Really glad it's under my belt. It was my first time to do this particular competition, and I'll never have to do it for the first time again. So that is a weight off of my shoulders now. Looking forward to the spring, to getting into some new activities, learning some new music, and reading some new books. I did read some this weekend, but I've actually been watching a lot more TV. The series that I have been binging this week is Drama World Seasons 1 and 2, which are on Amazon's free service right now. I really got into K-dramas a couple of years ago. I think the first one that I really truly watched was either Boys Over Flowers or Let's Eat. I think Let's Eat was the one that really kind of got me stuck on K-dramas because of the food. I've kind of been a K-drama junkie ever since, and Drama World is just, it's everything that I love about stories and K-drama put together. It has all of these popular tropes that you usually find in K-drama shows and stories, and it makes fun of them, it subverts them. I loved season 1 when it came out a few years ago, and I've been dying to watch season 2 for a long time. I think it came out last year in Korea, and it finally became available in the United States. I think it was like last weekend. I loved the second season. It's better than the first season. It's tighter. It seemed like they had a bigger budget. It was everything that you love about K-dramas just turned on its head. Part of the reason I started this channel was that so that I could recommend things to people and that maybe someone will listen to me and get into the things that I am also into. So if you haven't seen Drama World, you really should check it out. It's the best, and I really need for there to be a season 3, so watch it. Since we're talking about favorite series of stuff this week, I want to talk to you about my top 10 favorite fantasy series. Number 10 on my list, in its original form, this was published as 2 books, a duology. So the first one was Crown Duel and the second one was Court Duel. But in 2002, I think it was re-released as 1 book in 2 parts. But when I read it the first time, I read them separately. They were separate books. These are set in a really awesome fantasy world, like what you think of like as traditional fantasy. There's characters in it like the Marquis of Chevreith and the Countess of Clont. It's got romance, it's got magic, it's got tree creatures, it's got an evil despotic villain. I mean, it's just a good time. It was one of my first forays, I think, into young adult fantasy as a young person. It's kind of a nostalgic read for me. I will go back and reread it sometimes just to remember those days of my youth. It's number 10 on my list. Number 9 is actually the Sands of Arawiya duology by Hafsa Faizal. That is We Hunt the Flame and We Free the Stars. I really like Hafsa Faizal's world that she built. I liked the characters. I liked a lot of the dialogue. I think my favorite thing about what she's able to do with that story is how grand and just sweeping the world that she built seems. I also like a lot of the literary devices that she uses in her writing. As far as I know, that was her first work that she had published, and I know she's got some more stuff coming out, and I'm actually really excited to read it because even though this isn't very high up on my list, it's kind of a placeholder for whatever she's going to come out with next, because if that was her first release, I believe that her subsequent releases are going to be really something to read and watch for. Okay, number 8 on my list is the Clandestine Magic Trilogy by Colleen Cowley. This has three books. because that's what a trilogy is. Mother. The first one is subversive, the second one is radical, and the third one is revolutionary. I talked about this in one of my older videos, but I just thought that the magic system in this was really neat, and the way that the author blended that fantasy and magic element with something that was actually historical, which was women's suffrage, and kind of brought it into the future. I guess the speculative nature of that story I found to be fascinating. I definitely think it's worth a read for anybody who likes fantasy romance. So there you go. All right, number 7 on my list is the Winternight trilogy by Katherine Arden. I've also already talked about this one. The 3 books in this trilogy are The Bear and the Nightingale, The Girl in the Tower, and The Winter of the Witch. I really like the Russian folklore, the oldness, the ancientness of the world, and the way that the protagonist moves through it, the side that is kind of mundane and then the more magical side, and just the way they interact with all of this old lore, the way that influences the present day politics in, like, I think it's probably like 1600s Russia. I liked the protagonist, I liked the magical entities that were used in the story, and I definitely think that it is worth a read. Number 6, you know, what fantasy list would be complete without something by Rick Riordan, which I'm gonna go with Percy Jackson and the Olympians, just because that was the first one that I read by Rick Riordan, and it's the one that I remember most as a whole. I just thought that it was brilliant the first time that I cracked this one open, just the blending of the mythology with the modern world. The dialogue is hilarious, super fun to read. I think it's super fun for young readers. I've met lots of students who this was a series that really got them into reading, as are his other ones, but this is just really the one that started it all, for me at least. And then moving on to number 5, we've got the Frontier Magic series by Patricia C. Reed. This is not everybody's cup of tea. The Frontier Magic series is like an alternate history. It's set in the United States, but it's the United States where magic exists. There are ice dragons. The West is just almost uninhabitable. People can't travel there because the magical wildlife is so rampant there and just has taken over the West so much that it's just not safe for people there. So humans kind of live on the coasts and they don't really venture into the middle of the United States. It's set in like the 1800s after the Civil War in this particular timeline. It follows a young girl who is the 13th child in her family, which is considered super unlucky. She is twins with her brother, who happens to be the 7th son in this big family, which is considered super lucky, and their father is also a 7th son, so her twin brother is a double 7th son. He gets all sorts of magical training. People really cater to him. They do whatever he wants because he has all this power from being a double 7th son. And people really kind of treat her poorly because she's the 13th unlucky child. These stories follow the girl throughout most of her young life, like 5 years old into her early 20s, as she navigates this, as her family moves farther west, as she comes into being a young woman and realizing what's true about herself and her alleged curse of being a 13th child and what's not true, and just kind of owning her own future. I love the books because of that, and I also really love them just because of the magic. The way that the author came up with all these different ways for different people groups to do magic, I thought was just brilliant. I thought a lot of the creatures and the wildlife that the author came up with to match this magical world was just really great, cool stuff. The thing is, I like it. I know there are people who would find this boring because there are times when the protagonist is going through almost like a more naturalist biological explanation of the magical wildlife and the magical creatures that she's seeing, which I thought was fascinating, but some people are really not going to be into that. Also, these books have caught a lot of flack because of their lack of Native American representation. I know it was something that I noticed when I first read them. I was like, where are the natives? If you're going to be setting a book in 1800s America, they should be there. The author does have an explanation for why they're not. I know for some people that's going to be like a deal breaker for these books. For me, I don't think the author was acting in bad faith, and so in that spirit, I don't want to penalize them for something that I don't think was, what's the word that I'm looking for? They did not have bad intent. That's just my personal belief and decision that I came to as far as these books. I am Native American, but I am not all of the different types of Native American, so I cannot speak for you and I cannot speak for your loved ones that are Native American. Those are decisions you have to make for yourself. The point is, it's on my list at number 5. I loved it, and I guess that's all I really need to say about it. Number 4 on my list is the Paper Magician series by Charlie N. Holmberg. These are the Paper Magician, the Glass Magician, and the Master Magician. Those are the original trilogy. There was one that came out later called The Plastic Magician. It's not really part of the original trilogy. It's more its own thing, but it does have some characters from these books in it. Honestly, I'm not really into that one. I didn't love it as much as these original 3, but again, the magic in this original trilogy is so cool. It's set in England. It's an alternate history. It follows a female protagonist who has gone through school and she's training to be a paper magician. There are these different materials that people can train to be magicians in. Paper is one of them. Glass is another. I think rubber is one of them. Metals is another one of them. And so they can train in order to be able to enchant these specific materials. And once they bind to that material, that's the material that they're going to work with for the rest of their life. And so she's trained to be a paper magician. She's not really excited about it. She wanted to be something else. She goes to train with this really talented paper magician, and the story just unfolds from there. There is more intrigue and more exciting things happen to kick this story off. But I think even just this premise of this world is already enough to be excited about. When I read it, I remembered thinking that they would make really great like Studio Ghibli movies. Especially the first one, Paper Magician. I thought if they set this like Howl's Moving Castle, I would watch that. Anyhow, I really like this series. It came in at number 4. Number 3 is the Old Kingdom series by Garth Nix. I really got into this around the original trilogy, which is Sabriel, Liriel, and Abhorsen. Again, the world in this is so cool, and the magic system is just cool. That's why basically why any of these are here, is because it's either going to be the world or the magic system or the two combined. Following that first protagonist, whose name is Sabriel, she kind of lives in 2 worlds. She lives in like a sort of semi-modern, like 1940s-ish place where they've got technology, modern technology, use of telephone and radio and automobiles. But just across the wall from this country is what's known as the Old Kingdom, where only magic works. Any type of technology that tries to cross the walls just ceases working. Sometimes it falls apart, but only magic can work across this wall. And her family came from across that wall, and they're from a long line of people who keep the dead down when necromancers try to raise them to life. And she does this through a set of 7 bells, which is so cool. I mean, some people use wands and some people use staves, and Garth Nix decided that it needed to be bells, and I think that's great. They're just really cool and well written, and by the time you get to the end, you just really feel like you've been on a journey with these characters, and it's just one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. It's very kind of near and dear to my heart, because it's something that I actually share with my best friend, I share with my sister. It's something that I actually got to share with my husband. We read it together. It's just something that I get to share with my circle of people. It has a special place in my heart besides just being a really great story. All right, number 2 is going to be the Shades of Magic series by V.E. Schwab. And they are a darker shade of magic, a gathering of shadows, and a conjuring of light. Okay, cool magic system, yes. And I really like the characters, especially the female protagonist. There's just also a really vibrant, colorful cast of like secondary characters, even some that you think are like villainous or, you know, out for themselves. You still really like to see what they're gonna do. I find it beautifully written, the world's really rich, and you just really care about these characters and where they're gonna end up. They're just one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. And my number one favorite fantasy series of all time, at least for now, is The Six of Crows duology by Leigh Bardugo. I mean, everybody loves this duology, and there's a reason why they love it, is because it's well done. First of all, the Grishaverse is just one of the coolest like magic systems that you could come across. The small science, even just saying that, makes me want to read it. The world building is so rich and saturated. There's so much history and politics and just nuance to the way that this particular world has been built and the way that countries interact with each other. I do like the original Grishaverse trilogy, and I also do like the King of Scars duology, but I think that the sweet spot of this series is just, it's gotta be these two books, Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Following the crows, following this little heist. I don't think I've ever read a novel with multiple POVs that I have liked as much as I like these. There was very rarely a time when I ran across a character that I was like, well, we'll get this through this chapter so we can get on to the other characters, which is something I think is really rare when you're reading multiple POV novels. But this one in particular, there's just not really a weak link character. They're all interesting. They all have just really great backstories and motivations. I mean, I don't think it gets much better than this. As far as like the tip top, I would say it would have to be these two books for me. Well, that's all I got for you today. If my brand of awkward appeals to you, please feel free to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, you should go watch Drama World. You should think about doing it. You should really think about doing it. Bye.